88 cubic meters of cod index, said Mr. Foster with relish as they entered. Containing all the relevant information, added the director. Brought up to date every morning and coordinated every afternoon. On the basis of which they make their calculations. So many individuals of such and such quality, said Mr. Foster. Distributed in such and such quantities. The optimum decantify rate at any given moment. Unforeseen wastages promptly made good. Promptly, repeated Mr. Foster. If you knew the amount of overtime I had to put in after the last Japanese earthquake, he laughed good humoredly and shook his head. The predestinators send in their figures to the fertilizers, who give them the embryos they ask for. And the bottles come in here to be predestined in detail. After which they are sent down to the embryo store. Where we now proceed ourselves. And opening a door, Mr. Foster led the way down a staircase into the basement. The temperature was still tropical. They descended into a thickening twilight. Two doors and a passage with a double turn ensured the cellar against any possible infiltration of the day. Embryos are like photograph film, said Mr. Foster waggishly as he pushed open the second door. They can only stand red light. And in the effect, the sultry darkness into which the students now followed him was visible in crimson, like the darkness of closed eyes on a summer's afternoon. The bulging flanks of row on receding row, and tier above tier of bottles, glinted with innumerable rubies, and among the rubies moved the dim red spectres of men and women, with purple eyes and all the symptoms of lupus. The hum and rattle of machinery faintly stirred the air. Give them a few figures, Mr. Foster, said the director, who was tired of talking. Mr. Foster was only too happy to give them a few figures. 220 meters long, 200 wide, 10 high. He pointed upwards. Like chickens drinking, the students lifted their eyes towards the distant ceiling. 3 tiers of racks, ground floor level, first gallery, second gallery. The spidery steel work of gallery above gallery faded away in all directions into the dark. Near them, 3 red ghosts were busily unloading demijohns from a moving staircase. The escalator from the social predestination room. Each bottle could be placed on one of 15 racks. Each rack, though you couldn't see it, was a conveyor traveling at the rate of 33 and a third centimeters an hour, 267 days at 8 meters a day, 2,136 meters in all. One circuit of the cellar at ground level, one on the first gallery, half on the second, and on the 267th morning, daylight in the decanting room, independent existence, so called. But in the interval, Mr. Foster concluded, we've managed to do a lot to them. Oh, a very great deal. His laugh was knowing and triumphant. That's the spirit I like, said the director once more. Let's walk around. You tell them everything, Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster duly told them. Told them of the growing embryo on its bed of peritoneum, made them taste the rich blood surrogate on which it fed, explained why it had to be stimulated with placentum and thyroxin, told them of the corpus luteum extract, showed them the jets through which at every 12th meter from 0 to 2040 it was automatically injected, spoke of those gradually increasing doses of pituitary administered during the final 96 meters of their course, described the artificial maternal circulation installed in every bottle at Metro 112, showed them the reservoir of blood surrogate, the centrifugal pump that kept the liquid moving over the placenta and drove it through the synthetic lung and waste product filter, referred to the embryo's troublesome tendency to anemia, to the massive doses of hog's stomach extract and fetal fowl's liver, with which, in consequence, it had to be supplied, showed them the simple mechanism by means of which, during the last 2 meters out of every 8, all the embryos were simultaneously shaken into familiarity with movement, hinted at the gravity of the so-called trauma of decanting, and enumerated the precautions taken to minimize by a suitable training of the bottled embryo that dangerous shock, told them of the test for sex carried out in the neighborhood of Metro 200, explained the system of labeling a T for the males, a circle for the females, and for those who were destined to become free martins, a question mark, black, on a white ground. For of course, said Mr. Foster, in the vast majority of cases, fertility is merely a nuisance. One fertile ovary in 1200, that would really be quite sufficient for our purposes. But we want to have a good choice, and of course, one must always have an enormous margin of safety. So we allow as many as 30% of the female embryos to develop normally. The others get a dose of male sex hormone every 24 meters for the rest of the course. Result? They're decanted as free martins, structurally quite normal, except, he had to admit, that they do have the slightest tendency to grow beards, but sterile, guaranteed sterile. Which brings us at last, continued Mr. Foster, out of the realm of mere slavish imitation of nature into the much more interesting world of human intervention. He rubbed his hands, for of course they didn't content themselves with merely hatching out embryos. Any cow could do that. We also predestine and condition. We decant our babies as socialized human beings, as alphas or epsilons, as future sewage workers or future, he was going to say, future world controllers, but correcting himself, said future directors of hatcheries instead. The DHC acknowledged the compliment with a smile. They were passing meter 320 on rack 11. A young beta minus mechanic was busy with screwdriver and spanner on the blood surrogate pump of a passing bottle. The hum of the electric motor deepened by a fraction of a tone as he turned the nuts down, down, a final twist, a glance at the revolution counter, and he was done. He moved 2 paces down the line and began the same process on